Hello, so welcome to the Arizona Recycling Coalition, or the AzRC grant recipient meeting with our 2020 awardees. Since 1993, the Arizona Recycling Coalition has awarded over $270,000 in funding to nonprofit organizations, local governments, tribal nations, schools, entrepreneurs, and local businesses to increase recycling and to divert waste from the landfill. The Arizona Recycling Coalition is a nonprofit organization of professionals and citizens pledged to promote recycling efforts in private, public, and nonprofit sectors throughout Arizona. The intent of the AzRC Grants program is to develop new measurable initiatives to improve the recovery of recyclables and the circularity in Arizona. So in this session today, several of our 2021 winning Arizona Recycling Grant recipients are here with us to showcase their projects and to provide an update on the impact their work has had in the community. So I will first turn over to Kelly with Rover Elementary, and I will ask that you introduce yourself, your organization, as well as your grant project.
So my name's Kelly Hedberg, and I'm at Rover Elementary in Tempe, Arizona. We are a Title I elementary school, K through 5, and we have about 420 students here. Our grant goals and with the grant money were to compost daily with our students on campus, to provide an educational program about compost for every student, and to build a new compost station. At the time we applied for the grant, we just had a pile of compost on the ground, a rather large pile, but a pile of compost on the ground. So we started in January of, I guess it would have been 2021 is when the funds came through. And so at that time, due to COVID, students were eating in their classrooms, not in a cafeteria setting. So my composting data is really separated between the time when we were online, which was most of last year, except for 4 months. And then this year, where we are eating in the cafeteria, but we're split between 2 large spaces so the kids can be 6 feet apart. So logistically, composting has had its different challenges depending upon how we're eating lunch here at school. Regardless, we were really able to compost. I took 3 months from the cafeteria composting, and 3 months we collected 347 pounds of compost in those 3 months. That's with classroom composting, and that's with 32% participation in classrooms. So about 6 or 7 of our teachers out of 20 would regularly send their kids down to the garden where there was a compost weighing station. The kiddos use these buckets because they're easy for kids 5 years and up to carry. And then when they get to the station, there's a log and they have to weigh all their own waste. Okay. That included partially eaten and whole untouched food. Things really changed when we went back to the cafeteria because all food is free and reduced lunch since COVID has applied to all students at the school. So the elementary school cafeteria staff have less control. It's a federal government, and they are sending all the produce. So in a 4-month sample of this fall, we averaged 151 pounds a month, 600 pounds diverted from the cafeteria, and that is only wholly untouched produce still in the bag. We had such a high volume of food that's literally going from the line into the trash that we didn't even deal with the partially eaten food because we cannot manage 225 pounds of waste in our compost at school. So one of our big ahas, and for future folks applying, I would say you can expect more waste than you expect. And that the manpower to turn compost, to manage the pile, to collect the waste, to manage the data it's pretty high. So it's unrealistic that a school employee could take that on in addition to whatever their responsibilities are. Just because we have so many shortages with COVID, that redirecting human manpower that's not going to happen. So I estimated that if we included partially eaten food into our cafeteria lunchroom setting, we'd be looking at almost 2,000 pounds of waste in a 4-month period. So the realization of that was that we need a third-party partner to collect some of our waste. So we partnered up in the last year with Mark Ryan from Ryba Farms in Queen Creek. It's a regenerative farm, and he's dropping off 50-gallon drums at the school and collecting a lot of our waste for us. The problem is we still need someone to take everything out of the bag that's been bagged. So students do a lot of that, but it's double the manpower because we have cafeteria staff bagging it in the morning, and then we have kids unbagging it in the afternoon so that it can be recycled. The other challenge was Mark was coming every week voluntarily. And then with gas prices and time, he asked for a stipend, and none of our Title I funds will cover that. We did get our PTA recently last week to approve a one-time stipend to him for $940, which will get us 4 months of every other week pickup of 2 50-gallon drums. So between his 2 50-gallon drums and our on-site composting, we might be able to divert the food out of our cafeteria. So the big ahas out of that is kids are fully capable of composting K through 5. It's a student-led program mostly. I'm only here 15 hours a week, so I go in for maybe 20 minutes twice a week. Otherwise, we have a 5-year-old leader, a 7-year-old leader, and a 10-year-old leader. High volume is really difficult to manage. We did end up with a major rat infestation due to our our on-ground pile. So we ended up not building a compost station and moved to barrels that spin. But it did take us 4 months to get rid of our rats. So that's a big lesson learned if you have rats in your neighborhood. And then we did do a massive educational campaign. So we hired a photographer. She came in and did a 3-day project-based learning with Polaroid cameras, where kids learned how to, it was called Literacy Through Photography. And they created storyboards about composting using Polaroid cameras. So they created these storyboards, which were really fun, about what composting means to them. So it's really important when you're teaching kids that you let them have the permission, freedom, and independence to tell you what composting is, not what we want it to be. So here are some examples. Composting is food for rats. This is a good one. Gross compost turns into soil, then gives life to flowers and kindness in the garden. So every kiddo had to take pictures that they could write a sentence about composting. This is compost. If we didn't have the compost, we would not have good soil. Without our compost bin, we would have nowhere to put it for our garden. And it goes on and on. I have 80 of these. So they were pretty awesome. It was a pretty awesome, but this was the value of having kids do all the work, is that it's just trash to them if it's a bin in the cafeteria. But when you add in these educational elements to your program, then you really understand how you can hook a child into a lifelong practice. In terms of other takeaways for future applicants, I would say you have to consider financial support for the program. That'll be our next step. is to look for continued financial support for this program, both in terms of paying our third-party provider and for maintenance or manpower hours for managing the program. It's a direct tie to third grade standards. So if you're out of school, I would start with third grade. Decomposition is one of their science standards. But it's been really fun. I love composting. Kids love it. They'll get in there and dig. And we had snakes. We had snakes in our compost last year, which was really fun. They mated and reproduced. All kinds of maggots, you know, you name it, we had it in there. So the kids love that.
Next, we have Mary and Emily with the Azalita Project. If you guys could please introduce yourselves, your organization, as well as your grant project. Thank you.
Absolutely. My name is Emily Melhorn. I'm the former programs manager for the Azalita Project, and we're presenting on the Totally Reusable Bag program.
I'm Mary McCarthy. I'm the administrative director for the Azalita Project. The goals of Azalita Project's Totally Reusable Bag program are to reimagine a reusable bag as a community asset to be recirculated, to rethink all the different ways that single-use plastic bags enter our lives, whether it be through individual forgetfulness or larger delivery systems that do not provide a choice, to provide sustainable alternatives that do not impose the habits of single-use into reusable bags. In 2021, Azalita partnered with the farmers market to provide reusable bags to shoppers and a bin for return bags. Azalita Project volunteers consistently staff the area to educate people about the program, encourage return of bags, and to donate their own unwanted reusable bags. The challenges of the continued pandemic allowed us to greater consider equity by providing reusable bags to 3 groups devoted to relieving food insecurity in Flagstaff. Our strategy of return the bag shifted as the needs of the demographic and manner of food delivery were considered. Low-income university students and unsheltered people received a donation of reusable bags at free grocery store style pantries without a targeted message to return the bag to community recirculation. Azalita Project's partnerships with bi-weekly food pickup did encourage recipients to bring back their reusable bags for long-term viability of the program. The Azalita Project also partnered with Flagstaff's 2 libraries to replace plastic bags with reusables for their hold system. Having Azalitas return the bag bins at these frequently visited public library spaces also helped to elevate awareness of the program and donations of reusable bags. In 2021, the Azalita Project worked with our allies to create more drop-off locations for return bags and create systems for delivery, laundering, and recirculation of reusable bags. As we look to 2022 and the expansion of the program, we are considering new sanitation methods that help ease the workload of our volunteers and create greater buy-in from our partners and community members.
It seems like the project that you guys are working on has still been able to continue throughout the pandemic, though, as you mentioned, there's been some challenges. Has the school district started to adopt these practices as part of their sort of core values or as ways to keep it moving forward, despite some of the funding challenges you guys have faced and the staffing challenges?
Yes, I think the answer is yes, mainly because composting is tied directly to our school garden. So the school garden is a requirement of teachers to use. If the garden went away, I would think that the composting would be a real challenge to maintain. However, the school garden is not supported by our district here in Tempe Elementary. School gardens are sort of an individual school principal-driven component of schools right now. So our school garden and my position are funded through Title I funds that my principal has kind of chosen to not use on other areas. So, you know, on a larger scale outside of just composting, our outdoor education and garden education, you know, is a main focus for trying to get district support. And that's pretty typical for Valleywide.
Wonderful, thank you. So the goal of the Arizona Recycling Coalition's grant awards are to promote recycling and circular economy throughout Arizona. How has this grant made an impact in your community?
Okay. As far as an impact to the community and the question of how we help to create a circular economy, in our presentation, we kept using the word recirculate. And, we really realized that our community doesn't need to make an endless supply of reusable bags to continue the pattern of single-use plastic bags. This is not financially feasible or environmentally sustainable to treat reusable bags like they're single use. So by recirculating these bags and by viewing it as a community asset and not individual ownership, we are creating a circular economy of reusable bags.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Kelly, you did touch upon this while you were presenting, but did you have anything that you wanted to add in terms of how your award has made an impact in the community?
Sure, it's really helped us increase an awareness of composting, and every student has participated in both a vermicomposting and a composting 45-minute lesson in the garden. So every kiddo here knows what composting is, knows how to do it because it's offered daily in the cafeteria. I love that our program is student run and it's not just a big trash can in the cafeteria, so that it is a daily practice for kids and not just a trash sorting issue. And then our garden and composting station is open to our community. It's adjacent to a public park. So our campus is open weekends and evenings out after school hours. So we have quite a few community members that use our compost, which is great too. And then the other big impact was this third-party partnership with Riba Farms to really identify a group that can help us with this volume of waste. So he's not just composting our waste, he feeds all the produce to his chickens and sheep. So it's food for him, and then he composts the remainder.
Wonderful, that's fantastic. And then our second question is, how has the grant award helped achieve waste reduction, and what are your organization's next steps to create a more sustainable Arizona?
One of the beautiful things about the Totally Reusable Bag program and the way that we've designed it allows for a greater community input, but it also makes tracking metrics for it much more complicated. We do have, numbers that, we've given away over 1,000 bags, approximately about 200 came back to us. Of course, how many times was this one bag we handed out reused, that would replace a single-use bag? Those impacts are, very hard to determine before they come back to us, so these, and for other reasons, the exact, hard numbers of waste reduction are hard to measure. But I would say, as far as community buy-in, people, feeling really dedicated to not just return the bag that we gave them, but also in the case of some people to donate additional bags that are just sitting in their house unused. This was also a part of our program to really get people to rethink the way that reusable bags are viewed. Changing that paradigm of, you have your individual bag that you take to the grocery store, or you accidentally forget to take to the grocery store and you try to, do without the bag. Changing that paradigm and thinking about other ways that plastic bags typically come into our lives, and how to reduce that waste by creating the Totally Reusable Bag program.
And what are your organization's next steps to create a more sustainable Arizona?
So yes, our next steps, we touched on a little bit in the script, but we are looking at new sanitation methods that really help to reduce the workload of our volunteers and create more community buy-in from our partners. So that's a really big step. We're also looking at better branded signage, for our drop-off bins to really help spread the word better, and just creating a really good system for continued training of staff and volunteers, for our volunteers and for our partners, volunteers and staff, to really create a awareness of the program and that everybody's on the same page.
And there are two other quick things that I'd like to quickly add. In the next iteration of the Totally Reusable Bag program, we are, as Emily mentioned, we plan to work more closely with our partners. In our first pilot, which is what we just completed, we basically took bags that we already had in stock and distributed them to our partners. And these are bags of all different sizes and colors and no consistency. We're reusing bags that already existed, which is wonderful. But in this next iteration, to kind of get more of this public acknowledgement of the program and the circular nature of the program that we want to achieve. Again, not just that we're giving someone an individual bag for them to take home and put in their closet, but for them to take home and bring back for reuse, either to reuse themselves next time they visit the library, or to return in the drop-off bin for somebody else to reuse after it's been sanitized. So anyways, to spread that public message, we plan to work with our partners to do two things. One, to really identify the bag type and size that's best suited for the partners. Like the library has been providing some really great information about like the best size of book bag that really, fits their needs. And similarly, the food bank or food pantry, like water resistant bags are actually better for their needs. They're easier to clean up. So finding out some more of those specific details is going to be important for partner buy-in. And the second part related to that, we are working with a graphic designer to create some really beautiful branding on the bags and have them printed on the bags, kind of talking about the program and also to make them more recognizable. So two purposes there. One, when someone's walking around Flagstaff with the bag that says Totally Reusable Bags, it's a conversation starter and spreads the word. And secondly, it's a reminder when they're pulling new bags out of their closet, oh yeah, we need to take this back to the library. So that's kind of what's ahead for our program.
And then Kelly, I'll kick it to you with the same question. So how has the grant award helped achieve waste reduction, and what are your organization's next step to create a more sustainable Arizona?
We've composted over 1,700 pounds of waste. If I were to extend our numbers out for the whole 12 months since January, our compost was happening all summer as well. So major waste reduction, diversion was our biggest impact. I would say that the student educational impact, was really beneficial because the grant gave us a creative way with the literacy through photography to really demonstrate to kids how composting can be artistic and creative. It also really allowed our teachers to see how you can practice creative writing and still tie it to a concept like, a science concept of composting or decomposition. So it served kind of two educational purposes. Next steps is definitely another financial source for both our program management and our third-party waste. So I might reapply next year. If you can apply more than once, that would be great. We're also, now that we have this third-party waste in place, at least for the next 4 months, Farmer Mark wants to provide buckets for the neighborhood and community members, so that he can get more waste coming in from just the school. So it would really be a community extension of what we're doing now, and providing them with a bucket is really all we need to do for that. So that would be our major goals going forward.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. And then our last question is, as you have been successful grant recipients, what advice would you give to an organization applying for an AzRC grant? And I'll kick it off to Emily.
We are living in extraordinary times. And my advice would be to prepare for the unexpected and come up with contingencies, even as you're writing the grant. That's certainly something that we needed to do throughout the course of the continued pandemic. Even after that passes, this finally goes away, it's still good advice.
This is not unique to AzRC, but really thinking about future funding sources. This is something that Kelly has mentioned several times now, and I think it's just spot on, especially with these sustainability-oriented programs and programs that are focused on recirculation of resources. It's not just it's never, as far as I can think of, never going to be a one and done program. There's always going to be continued inputs. So I don't think you have to have everything figured out when you first apply, but having some plan of how you're going to continue is vital.
Yeah, I would just say to partner. Like a school has a ton of resources and a captive audience, but it's clear that when it comes to composting and some larger sustainability issues, that is not a skill that exists within a school system or a workplace or, a lot of places where people spend the majority of their day. So it's where they're creating waste or making some of these decisions. A lot of those places don't really have sustainability skills built into their human workforce. And so that might change with time as professions change. But in the meantime, partner. Don't recreate anything that's already out there. Go find that person and form a relationship with them, because it's so time consuming and costly to recreate what is already out there. That would be my main takeaway. And if you're dealing with waste, expect way more than even you think. Add 30% to whatever your number is, especially during COVID. The waste is just exorbitant.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us and for giving us an update on your projects. It sounds like despite all of the obstacles we've endured throughout the pandemic and, within each owns projects individually, you guys have done an incredible job, and we really appreciate you as members of our organization and just hearing your testimonials. And so we'll wrap this up. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned earlier, you can reapply, or if you haven't applied before, we have opportunities every year, and we've been able to hopefully help with these different projects and continue to do so in the future. So thank you.